Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and sorry for missing yesterday's video/podcast. It was just a bonkers day, and by the time I actually poked my head up from multiple calls, including international ones, it was just too late. But today, I've got some very interesting news for you because the Earn It Act may compromise your privacy, and it just passed a Senate Judiciary Committee. Now, here's what's going on, and this is coming from multiple sources, but I'm cribbing quite a bit here from Security Week. Now, on Thursday, July 3rd, the Senate Judiciary Committee voted to approve a revised version of the Earn It Act, which would eliminate, and I quote, blanket liability protection for online platforms which fail to protect against child sexual abuse material. Now, the bill needs approval by the full Senate and the House of Representatives, but it is one of the first, interestingly enough, to really chip away or take a dent at the liability shield for internet services. This is the law that's known as Section 230. And I've done quite a bit on Section 230 thus far, and obviously Section 230, as I've mentioned, has come under renewed scrutiny in recent months, which is why you've seen it here on this podcast/video. Now, here are the two sides of this argument for the Earn It Act, and I've been over this before, but just a quick refresher. So backers of this bill say that it would provide incentives to crack down on online child abuse and exploitation. Obviously, nobody wants to see a child abused online or exploited in any way, shape, or form, myself included. However, critics say that this bill could shut down constitutionally protected free speech and open up these online firms and platforms like Facebook, for example, for endless litigation. Now, the Judiciary Committee panel made a last-minute revision taking out an earlier proposal which would have required online platforms to enable law enforcement to access encrypted materials or face losing their liability protection. This is what I talked about in my last video/podcast on this matter. President Trump, for example, had mentioned, well, we'll just remove Section 30, that liability shield of, let's say, a Facebook that is an online platform. If I go ahead and post something that is demonstrably criminal, Facebook is not liable for my actions. They simply give me a platform. I'm choosing to break the law. Facebook is not liable. That is the revision that was removed from this, which I think is a good step. But, and this is a big but, civil liberty activists said the measure still imperils online safety by calling for a commission to set a quote-unquote best practices, which could lead to a weakening for encryption, for secure communication, meaning the best practices may decide that weakening the encryption to allow law enforcement in anyway, which is what I was talking about with the provision that they had removed, might be the best thing either. So even though they say they've removed the specific wording for that provision, that best practices leaves it open for them to do the exact same thing as what they apparently removed, and that's what has everybody up in arms. Now, also, the bill, and I quote, sets the stage for judges across the country to apply scores of different legal standards to intermediaries, content moderation, and security practices. That is from Emma Alonso of the Center for Democracy and Technology. And Emma, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. But that is, I think, absolutely correct. And this is the issue that we have here. Oftentimes when we are creating laws, and I said this in my last video on this matter, we create laws for the lowest common denominator, meaning, if we have, let's say, a 0.2% criminal element in a society, and we are making laws to address those 0.2%, we are then impeding the other 99.8% of us that are not breaking laws. And again, I don't know where the ratio breaks down, but that is essentially the logic here. We have a right to privacy, and as a law-abiding citizen, one that is not, let's say, exploiting or abusing anybody, why should my encryption be weakened? And this is the problem that we have traditionally with this. If you look at history, we have essentially, when it comes to, let's say, law enforcement, whatever form it takes over the centuries, and criminals, we have a cat and mouse game. The criminals innovate and try to get away with things. Law enforcement catches up, builds new defenses, and tries to innovate themselves, and on and on and on and on. So, by virtue of that, should we, as law-abiding citizens, as you are watching and listening to this, and I'm assuming all my listeners are law-abiding citizens, why should we basically pay the price for the criminals? Why should we have our privacy violated potentially, or our potential rights, or our potential right to, let's say, standard encryption violated, just to make law enforcement's job easier when they have other tools that they can be using for this? And I understand that's a big thing for them, but I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this, because the civil libertarian in me, for example, like just shrieks at having that taken away, because I think encryption standards are there. And it's not just myself, but if we are lowering encryption standards in that vein, that means potentially my clients in business in any vertical, including government, may have their encryption standards weakened as well by order of law. And that makes intellectual property defense much harder for a cybersecurity professional like myself. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. That is your news of the day. And I think it's something that we really need to discuss, because as this winds its way through the U.S. government, both houses of Congress, we may see a fundamental shift in how we address cybersecurity and data security by virtue of having to literally adhere to a weakened encryption standard, not just for individuals, but for everybody as well. And I think that's something that really needs discussing. And by virtue of that, that is your news of the day. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well, where we're hopefully encrypted. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, everyone.